when we speak of reciprocals, we are simply talking about two numbers which are the inverse of each other. They're upside down compared to each other. They're just reflected opposite. Okay, in simple terms. So division. So find the reciprocal of a fraction. Given any number has its reciprocal. So how do we know they are reciprocals of each other? Well, let's start with an example. 3 over 5. Let me zoom in there a little bit. So I have 3 over 5. If I multiply this number 3 over 5 by, let me see, by 5 over 3, what happens here is that we will multiply the numerators and we will multiply the denominators. So that would then look like 3 times 5 over 5 times 3. To multiply, or to simplify, in other words, remove the common factors that we have here. And here we can see that we have 3's which are common, 5's which are common, so they have all been removed and gotten replaced by 1. Then we multiply the remaining values, and so we say 1 times 1, that gives us 1, and 1 times 1 gives us 1, which gives us a whole number 1. Now, what have we just seen? We have seen that if we are given a fraction, we can find its reciprocal by simply multiplying that number by the value which will be upside down. If you see, the 5 goes to the top, the 3 comes to the bottom. Okay, so that's what we do there. So this is what happens. 5 goes to the top, the 3 goes to the bottom. So that is given a fraction. And also we can see that the product, or when we multiply two numbers which are reciprocal of each other, we get a value of 1. So the product of two numbers is 1 if they are reciprocals of each other. Okay, so we can summarize that by saying two numbers are reciprocal of each other if their product is 1. That's the key point there. Okay, now be careful, 0 does not have a reciprocal because the product of 0 and a number can never be 1. Okay, so that's one thing you need to remember, that 0 does not have a reciprocal. 0 has no reciprocal. Why? Because there's no value that can be multiplied by 0 and get a value of 1. So let's start with a few examples. I'll come up here, and if I tell you find the reciprocal of the following numbers, what do we do? What should we do? What's the approach? Okay, so if I give you a number, say for example a 2/5, okay, to find the reciprocal of this number here, we will invert the numerator and the denominator. So let's invert it, and when we invert this becomes then 5 over 2. We invert it. Okay, this procedure will produce a new fraction that when multiplied by the original fraction, okay, this new fraction multiplied by the original fraction, it gives a result of 1. Let's see if that is true. 2 times 5, well, we can put it this way, 2 times 5 over 5 times 2. Can we cancel anything? Yes, we can. So therefore we could cancel 5's and 5's, 2's and 2's. That gives us with 1, which is 1 over 1, which is 1. Therefore 5 over 2 is the reciprocal of 2/3. Let's try our next one. B, negative 5/7. Okay, remember our value needs to be a product, a value of positive 1. So therefore the only way we can get a negative times the next number and give us a value of 1, it will be if and only if the other value is negative for it to be positive 1. So we must make it this positive, negative. and then we will invert the fraction, which then becomes 7 over 5. Alright, so negative times negative will then cancel out and give us positive, so we can forget about that, and we draw our line and we say 5 times 7, 7 times 5. Therefore the 7's will cancel with each other as 1, and the 5's with 1, giving us 1 over 1, which is the value of 1. So that's how we get that value there. Okay, now let's see if we can solve now with a number that is a whole number. See, if we have 5, what is the reciprocal of 5? Well, we all know that 5 could be written as 5 over 1, and so the inverse or the inverted value of 5 over 1 will be 1 over 5. This now gives us 5 times 1, 1 times 5, which is, cancel the 5's, 1 over 1, which is 1. Okay, let's try our next example. Given a negative 3, well, we need to get 3 to be in a fraction form. That becomes then negative 3 over 1, and the only way we can get this to be positive if the next number is negative, and we put it upside down, which is then 1 over 3, giving us 3 times 1 and 1 times 3. They cancel, giving us 1 over 1, which is 1. What happened to the negatives? Well, negative times negative will give us a positive. Now, do not confuse the concept of opposite of a negative number and the reciprocal of a negative number. Okay, for example, okay, so you need to take note of this. Note, reciprocal of negative 7/12 is negative 12 over 7. Opposite of negative 7/12 is 7 over 12. That's the opposite. This is the reciprocal, this is the opposite for that value there.